Hi guys. I just got a text that I scheduled this wrong. So if you are here, welcome. I'm sorry that I did it at the wrong time. And as you can tell from my face, I just went exercising. So I'm also a little flustered. Give me just a second here. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay. All right. So, hi Tess. Have you been doing any exercise? Because I do not in normal times do exercise, but since we're all cooped up in our houses, I started trying to go on walks and even go running, which is really good for my health, but also it's hot outside. So instead of having my usual hot tea, I am having some really cold water. Okay. So usually, well, I guess not usually. Yesterday we had that story by Isaac Asimov, and it was a science fiction story, and it's one of my favorites. But today I want to read a story by a guy named O. Henry because I think that he just is such an interesting person. So first of all, a lot of times when we say that somebody is a writer or an author, what we're picturing in our head is that they wrote a book, like they wrote a book and then published it. But books aren't the only things that you can read. You know, you could also be somebody who mainly writes poetry and then you're a poet. But you could also be somebody who publishes short stories. So a short story is basically any story that is shorter than a book. So some short stories are really short, just like a page long. Some short stories can be a little longer. But O. Henry is not famous because he wrote books. He's famous because he wrote short stories. And he also had kind of a wild life. Tess, you went on a bike ride. Okay, that's exercise. That's good. That's good. Well, one of the things that happened to O. Henry is that he made some bad choices. He made some bad choices and he got arrested for trying to embezzle from a bank. So that means that he wasn't taking money like, pow, pow, give me your money, but that he worked for the bank and he was kind of taking money. And he got caught. And on his way to the court, he got on a train and just ran away. He ran away to South America. He lived in South America for years. That's not made up. That's real life. So the story that we're going to read by O. Henry, I think it's interesting to know kind of what happened in his own real life. Okay, so this story is called A Retrieved Reformation. Okay. Just like the last couple of stories, this is not a 2020 story. This is probably from, I don't know, like the 1930s-ish. A guard came into the prison shoe shop where Jimmy Valentine was assiduously stitching uppers and escorted him to the front office. The warden handed Jimmy his pardon, which had been signed that morning by the governor. Jimmy took it in a tired kind of way. He had served nearly 10 months of a 4-year sentence. He had expected to stay only about 3 months at the longest. When a man with as many friends on the outside as Jimmy Valentine had is received in the stir, it is hardly worthwhile to cut his hair. Okay, so in this one paragraph, we just learned a lot of information. So when it says that Jimmy Valentine is stitching uppers, well, actually, I'm going to take off my shoe and show you. So here is the shoe. The bottom of the shoe is called the sole. Remember in Alice in Wonderland, there was like the joke about the sole being like a fish sole. The top part is called the upper. So Jimmy Valentine, while he is in prison and is making shoes, because that's what, they had the prisoners do. And it says that he's doing it assiduously, which means he's being very, very careful and working really hard at it. And it also, notice what it says here, that he was supposed to be in prison, incarcerated for 4 years, but he's only there a couple of months. And he thought that he shouldn't even have been there that many months because he has so many friends, like powerful friends who could get him pardoned. Now, Valentine, said the warden, you'll go out in the morning, brace up, and make a man of yourself. You're not a bad fellow at heart. Stop cracking safes and live straight. Me? Said Jimmy in surprise. Why, I never cracked a safe in all my life. Oh, no, laughed the warden. Of course not. Let's see now. How was it you happened to get sent up on that Springfield job? Was it because you wouldn't provide an alibi for fear of compromising somebody in extremely high-toned society? Or was it simply a case of a mean old jury that had it in for you? It's always one or the other with you innocent victims. Me? Said Jimmy, still blankly virtuous. Why, warden, I was never in Springfield in all my life. Take him back, Cronin, said the warden, and fix him up with outgoing clothes. Unlock him at 7 in the morning and let him come to the bullpen. Better think over my advice, Jimmy. Or Valentine. At 7:15 on the next morning, Jimmy stood in the warden's outer office. He had on a suit of the villainously fitting ready-made clothes and a pair of the stiff, squeaky shoes that the state furnishes to its discharged compulsory guests. So compulsory means that you have to be there. So a compulsory guest is another way of saying a prisoner, somebody who has to be there. And, we've seen this conversation between Jimmy Valentine and the warden. The warden's trying to tell him, make good choices, don't go stealing from people anymore, blah, blah, blah. And Jimmy, of course, is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never stolen anything anywhere. So we don't really get the sense that Jimmy is planning on turning a new leaf in his life because he can't even acknowledge that he robbed people to begin with, right? The clerk handed him a railroad ticket and a $5 bill, which the law expected him to rehabilitate himself into good citizenship and prosperity. The warden gave him a cigar and shook hands. Valentine 9762 was chronicled in the books. Pardoned by governor, and Mr. James Valentine walked out into the sunshine. Disregarding the song of the birds, the waving green trees, the smell of the flowers, Jimmy headed straight for the restaurant. There he tasted the first sweet joys of liberty in the shape of a broiled chicken and a bottle of white wine, followed by a cigar a grade better than the one the warden had given him. From there, he proceeded leisurely to the depot. He tossed a quarter into the hat of a blind man sitting by the door and boarded the train. 3 hours set him down in a little town near the state line. He went to the cafe of one Mike Dolan and shook hands with Mike, who was alone behind the bar. Sorry we couldn't make it sooner, Jimmy, my boy, said Mike. But we had that protest from Springfield to buck against, and the governor nearly balked. Feeling all right? Fine, said Jimmy. Got my key? He got his key and went upstairs, unlocking the door of a room at the rear. Everything was just as he had left it. There on the floor was still Ben Price's collar button that had been torn from the eminent detective's shirt band when they had overpowered Jimmy to arrest him. Pulling out from the wall of a folding bed, Jimmy slid back a panel in the wall and dragged out a dust-covered suitcase. He opened this and gazed fondly at the finest set of burglar's tools in the East. It was a complete set made of specially tempered steel, the latest designs in drills, punches, braces, and bits, Jimmy's clamps and augers, with 2 or 3 novelties invented by Jimmy himself, in which he took pride. over $900 they had cost him to have made it a place where they make such things for the profession. In half an hour, Jimmy went downstairs and through the cafe. He was now dressed in tasteful and well-fitting clothes and carried his dusted and cleaned case in his hand. Okay, so we just learned more about Jimmy, right? The prison warden gives him a cigar and like $5. Good luck. And Jimmy, and the train ticket. And Jimmy takes the train ticket and gets his $900 suitcase full of robbery tools. So all kinds of tools to pick a lock, to pick a safe, right? And he's got stylish clothes. So we know that Jimmy's not just a burglar, he's a pretty successful burglar. And he's really well connected because he was pardoned by the governor himself, right? Got anything on? Asked Mike Dolan genially. Me, said Jimmy in a puzzled tone. I don't understand. I'm representing the New York Amalgamated Short Snap Biscuit Cracker and Frazzled Wheat Company. This statement delighted Mike to such an extent that Jimmy had to take a seltzer milk on the spot. He never touched hard drinks. So, yep, Jimmy, he's got like a secret identity that he's, you know, a robber, but he's pretending that he is somebody that is like a salesman, right? I also love the detail about the bed that folds into a wall. Those are called a Murphy bed. Wouldn't those be fun if you had a bed that folded into the wall? After the week, a week after the release of Valentine 9762, there was a neat job of safe burglary done in Richmond, Indiana, with no clue to the author. A scant $800 was all that was secured. 2 weeks after that, a patented, improved burglar safe proof in Logansport was opened like a cheese to the tune of $1,500. Currency, securities, and silver untouched. That began to interest the rogue catchers. Then an old-fashioned bank safe in Jefferson City became active and threw out of its crater an eruption of banknotes amounting to $5,000. The losses were now high enough to bring the matter up into Ben Price's class of work. By comparing notes, a remarkable similarity in the methods of its burglaries was noticed. Ben Price investigated the scenes of the robberies and was heard to remark, that's Dandy Jim Valentine's autograph. He's resumed business. Look at that combination knob. Jerked out as easy as pulling up a radish in wet weather. He's got the only clamps that can do it. And look how clean those tumblers were punched out. Jimmy never has to drill but one hole. Yes, I guess I want Mr. Valentine. He'll do his next bit without any short time or clemency foolishness. All right. So Jimmy Valentine, he's got his tools, and now all of a sudden, there's all of these bank robberies that are happening. And the detective that had caught him the first time, this guy, Ben Price is like, oh, I know who's been doing these robberies. It's got to be Jimmy Valentine. Ben Price knew Jimmy's habits. He had learned them while working on the Springfield case. Long jumps, quick getaways, no Confederates, and a taste for good society. These ways had helped Mr. Valentine to become as noted as a successful dodger of retribution. It was given out that Ben Price had taken up the trail of the elusive cracksman, and other people with burglar-proof safes felt more at ease. One afternoon, Jimmy Valentine and his suitcase climbed out of the mail hack in Elmore, a little town 5 miles off the railroad down in the Blackjack County country of Arkansas. Jimmy, looking like an athletic young senior just home from college, went down the board sidewalk toward the hotel. A young lady crossed the street, passed him at the corner, and entered a door over which was the sign, The Elmore Bank. Jimmy Valentine looked into her eyes, forgot what he was, and became another man. She lowered her eyes and colored slightly. Young men of Jimmy's style and looks were scarce in Elmore. Jimmy collared a boy that was loafing on the steps of the bank as if he were one of the stockholders and began to ask him questions about the town, feeding him dimes at intervals. By and by, the young lady came out looking royally unconscious of the young man with the suitcase, and went her way. "Isn't that young lady Polly Simpson?" asked Jimmy with specious guile. "Nah," said the boy. "She's Annabelle Adams. Her pa owns this bank. Why'd you come to Elmore for? Is that a gold watch chain? I'm going to get a bulldog. Got any more dimes?" Jimmy went to the Planters Hotel, registered as Ralph D. Spencer, and engaged a room. Okay, let's pause a little second, because what has happened is love at first sight. Jimmy has, gotten off the train with his suitcase like he is going to rob, the bank at this place, like he has robbed a whole bunch of other places. And then he sees this girl, and it's like cartoon heart eyes, right? And then when it says that he fed the kid dimes, he's bribing the kid with money to tell him who this girl is, right? And who is she? Her dad owns the bank that he was about to rob. Okay. And notice that when he gets his room at the hotel, he uses a fake name. He says that his name is Ralph Spencer. He leaned on the desk and declared his platform to the clerk. He said he had come to Elmore to look for a location to go into business. How was the shoe business now in the town? He had thought of the shoe business. Was there an opening? The clerk was impressed by the clothes and manner of Jimmy. He himself was something of a pattern of fashion to the thinly gilded youth of Elmore, but he now perceived his shortcomings. While trying to figure out Jimmy's manner of tying his four-in-hand, that's his tie, he cordially gave information. Yes, there ought to be a good opening in the shoe line. There wasn't an exclusive shoe store in the place. The dry goods and general stores handled them. Business in all lines was fairly good. He hoped Mr. Spencer would decide to locate in Elmore. He would find it a pleasant town to live in, and the people very sociable. Mr. Spencer thought that he would stop over in the town a few days and look over the situation. No, the clerk needn't call the boy. He would carry up his suitcase himself. It was rather heavy. Mr. Ralph Spencer, the phoenix that arose from Jimmy Valentine's ashes left by the flame of a sudden and alterative attack of love, remained in Elmore and prospered. He opened a shoe store and secured a good run of trade. So this is like pretty funny to me, because he knows that he can't rob the bank because that girl that he likes, that's her dad's bank. And so when he decides to do something else, the only other thing that he knows how to do is make shoes, because he learned how to do that in prison. And now he's calling himself Ralph Spencer. At the end of socially, he was also a success and made many friends. And he accomplished the wish of his heart. He met Miss Annabelle Adams and became more and more captivated by her charms. At the end of a year, the situation of Mr. Ralph Spencer was this. He had won the respect of the community. His shoe store was flourishing, and he and Annabelle were engaged to be married in 2 weeks. Mr. Adams, the typical plodding country banker, approved of Spencer. Annabelle's pride in him almost equaled her affection. He was as much at home in the family of Mr. Adams and that of Annabelle's married sister as if he were already a member. One day, Jimmy sat down in his room and wrote this letter, which he mailed to the safe address of one of his old friends in St. Louis. Okay, here's the letter that Jimmy writes. Dear old pal, I want you to be at Sullivan's place in Little Rock next Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. I want you to wind up some little matters for me. And also, I want to give you a present of my kit of tools. I know you'll be glad to get them. You can duplicate the lot for $1,000. Say, Billy, I've quit the old business a year ago. I've got a nice store. I'm making an honest living, and I'm going to marry the finest girl on earth 2 weeks from now. It's the only life, Billy, the straight one. I wouldn't touch a dollar of another man's money now for $1 million. After I get married, I'm going to sell out and go west, and where there won't be so much danger of having old scores brought up against me. I tell you, Billy, she's an angel. She believes in me, and I wouldn't do another crooked thing for all the world. Be sure to Be sure to be at Sully's, for I must see you. I'll bring along the tools with me. Your old friend, Jimmy. On the Monday night after Jimmy wrote this letter, Ben Price jogged unobtrusively into Elmore in a livery buggy. He lounged about town in his quiet way until he found out what he wanted to know. From the drugstore across the street from Spencer's shoe store, he got a good look at Ralph D. Spencer. Going to marry the banker's daughter, are you, Jimmy? Said Ben to himself softly. Well, I don't know. Okay, so what is happening here is that Ralph, Spencer, who's really Jimmy Valentine, he really has turned over a new leaf and is making an honest living and is doing the shoes. We know that he's serious about not ever wanting to rob a bank again because he's going to give away his special suitcase with like the $900 full of tools. But dun dun dun, the detective has come to town. And we're going to leave off the story right there because we've run out of time. And tomorrow we'll find out what happened. But before I go, does anybody have any questions about the story so far or any opinions? What do you think is going to happen to Jimmy Valentine? Do you think he's really going to stop robbing banks? You think the detective is going to catch him? I don't know if y'all are thinking or typing or keeping your opinions to yourself. But you can kind of see what I mean, that it's interesting to know that the writer, O. Henry, he had his own brush with the law, right? And he served time in prison himself. All right, y'all. Well, if there are, how am I doing? Listen, Tess, I am excited for the nice weather because it's good for my garden. I am happy about exercising some because I think it's going to help me get healthy. But yeah, how are you doing, Tess? Are you bored at home or are you finding a lot of stuff to do? I wonder if you're reading. I'm also reading a lot. I'm also very excited because I ordered a keyboard, a piano, so I can play some music at home. So that's kind of exciting. Tess, you're bored. Well, we need to find some good books for you to read. Or maybe, do you draw, Tess? Are you a person who likes art? You know what you should do, Tess? You should draw me a picture and then have your mom mail it to me. And then I can get some fun mail and I can put up your picture on my wall. How about that? I think that's a fun idea. Okay. We do have to go now, but tomorrow we will see what happens with Jimmy Valentine and Annabelle Adams and the detective, dun, 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 Ben Price. All right. So bye, guys. I will see you tomorrow.